Well, hello once again, all my vintage dirt bike loving YouTubers, and welcome back once more to my new and improved internet video site, Classic Dirt Bike TV. Now in this current series we are featuring bikes from the Terry Pickering private dirt bike collection, and next up we have bike number 3 of the 5 machines that we are featuring on my YouTube channel. So let's take a look at Terry Pickering's 1981 TGM 125. Now of course, as in the previous Terry Pickering bikes, this machine is not a restoration or even a good refurbished example of an 81 TGM 125. This bike is brand new from that year, and this, as well as the other machines that will follow on my channel, are all brand new machines that Terry has purchased from a private collector in Belgium. Now the TGM motorcycle manufacturing company made bikes from 1974 right up until 1983. Now the Italian company was founded by Terzi Giovanni Marchesini, and hence the abbreviation of TGM. Now TGM actually started building motocross machines with modified Sachs engines in their chassis, and later in 1973 the company built their first 125 motocross bike. Now later, from 1975, their model range was further improved and Hyro engines were then fitted in these off-road bikes. Now TGM are not one of the more commonly known motorcycle manufacturers from Italy, but they did take part in the 125cc class of the World Motocross Championships in 1978. But our particular example here is, of course, a brand new machine from 1981 that has been in storage for almost 40 years. Now naturally, because this is an Italian machine, this little TGM is fitted with a 125cc liquid cooled Hyro motor, which of course are manufactured in Italy. As you can see, the little 125 has a reed valve induction system, and it looks like the motor is being fed by this, what looks like to me, Dell'Orto carburetor, but of course don't quote me on that particular fact. I don't know every single thing about every single bike, but this carburetor does look suspiciously like a Dell'Orto carb. Certainly a big carburetor to feed that little 125 engine, but I can imagine it would do its job very well. Now when it comes to the gearbox on these little machines, as far as I'm led to believe, these had a 6-speed gearbox fitted to these little 125s. Now water-cooled engines on these little Hyros. Previous engines, of course, were the standard piston port air-cooled motors, so this was a brand new venture for Hyro with this water cooling. Plastic airbox, of course, supplied by a service who also made other plastics for different makes and models of motocross machines. Now when it comes to the front suspension on this bike, a very substantial pair of suspension units, very long legs on this little 125, But when it comes to the actual manufacturer of these suspension units, I'm not entirely sure. It's a bit of a mystery to me, as I've never come across this particular maker's mark on these suspension units. The only thing I can surmise is that it's NFI suspension units, which is certainly a set of suspension forks that I've never come across personally. Now, when it comes to the rear suspension, of course, single shock rear Corticosa suspension unit with this remote reservoir for holding the suspension's gas system. Now, from what I can recall, in 1981, these Corticosa suspension units weren't exactly top of the range, but they were certainly good enough for that particular period. And of course, the rear shock would bolt onto the bottom of this linkage system on this very substantial swing arm. Now, a beautiful alloy sand cast swing arm on this bike, and it still amazes me of the condition of some of the metal parts on this bike, which is nearly 40 years old, and there's not a sign of any furring or corrosion setting in on any of the metal surfaces. And as you can see, this bike has been well looked after in its last 40 years or so. But nevertheless, it's a very strong looking swing arm, and it looks like this swing arm could do the job very well on this bike, but quite a long swing arm for a little 125cc motocrosser. Now, once again, TGM opt to use plastic for their fuel tanks, as of course many of the other manufacturers were doing in 1981 by using plastic as their storage devices for the fuel. And of course, some information on the fuel tank there just to help you out with regards to the premix before you add it to the tank. Now, these TGMs had a very nice substantial seat for a little 125, with the front of the seat of course extending over the rear of the tank, which was quite an innovative thing for 1981, but nevertheless a very nice and comfortable place to put your backside on. Now, as you would expect on a brand new bike that's never been started or ridden, this exhaust is almost as it left the factory in 1981. No dings or dents in the exhaust pipe, leading up to this SEM chrome plated alloy tailpipe. Now, I'm not entirely sure of the manufacturer SEM, but I'll just assume that this part once again is made in Italy. Now, as you would expect, the bike still has its original grips, handlebars and levers, and also a very nice touch is to have these TGM lever covers to protect the cables etc. from dust and dirt. Now, the throttle gasser looks like it's an old Tomaselli twist grip from back in the day, and of course the bike still has its original Tomaselli bar pad, which is a very rare thing to have on one of these 1981 bikes. The plastics of course are still the original Robert plastics. Very rare to find these original plastics on a bike that is coming up for 40 years old, but nevertheless these plastics are in absolutely superb condition. And as you would expect, these plastic radiator scoops are like brand new on this bike, and it's nothing more than you would expect from a bike that's never been on a motocross track. Now, what these actual little TGM 125s were like to ride on a motocross track, I'm not entirely sure, and I have to admit that this is my first ever encounter with this Italian TGM manufacturer, but the bike certainly looks the goods. It looks like it's very purposeful and looks like it could do a good job on a motocross track, and possibly with the right rider on board, this could be a very nice little tool to ride. Now, of course, to find a second-hand used example of one of these TGM bikes is very rare indeed, but to find one that is brand new and has never ever been started or ridden from 1981 is something very rare indeed. But this, of course, is only bike number 3 of the 5 that we will be featuring here on my YouTube channel, and stay tuned, because coming up soon we have the 4th bike in the Terry Pickering collection, this lovely Ancelotti 250 we will be featuring next here on my YouTube channel, so make sure that you subscribe in order that you don't miss the final 2 bikes from the Terry Pickering private classic dirt bike collection. This video was brought to you in association with WorldSport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more information.